My parenting plan. Hello guys, so I know that this is a little bit of a personal video, and I do want to say this, even though it's personal, I was like, this isn't going to be of use to anybody, but maybe it is. Maybe it'll inspire some people, you know? I'm not saying everybody follow it or whatever, but it's just what I want to do. Especially after I made the parenting video, I kind of thought about it and thought about like, I should actually have a plan for how I'm going to raise my kids. And there's some things on here that was not really talked about in my time that I kind of wish I did. So I am going to be putting some of that on here. So from 0 to 1 is breastfeeding. There's this kind of idea that you don't want to breastfeed for too long because you still want your breast to be taut. And honestly, I never understood it, because even if they sag, they still look good. And if you think your man is going to be uncomfortable with that, then your man is not a real man, okay? Your man should be wanting you to keep your kids healthy, not focus on how your body looks. The thing is, breasts that sag or whatever still look good, so I don't get it. Isn't your baby's health more important than your beauty? Science says that it's proper, it's right to breastfeed a baby for a year. So why are you just gonna bypass that because, oh, I want to look cute? I mean, if your breasts are sagging anyway as a woman, isn't that proof that you've breastfed? Isn't that something to be kind of like proud of in a way? Whatever. Okay, let's just move on. This is so unnecessary to have this conversation. So from 1 to 7, I'll try to keep my kids off of electronics, and I meant to put this on here, but I also want to homeschool my kids. And the reason why I want them to be off of electronics is because when you're little, the only thing you do on electronics is play games or watch videos. Probably gonna wait until 6 or something before I start doing that, or maybe 8. I'm thinking age 8 specifically. And by the way, my parents didn't give us a phone until we were like 13. I'm gonna stick with that as well. I just don't see the point of little kids having phones. My kids are not gonna have social media on my watch, okay? Because social media, I grew up without it and I'm completely fine, okay? Maybe it's fun and maybe a lot of people are on it and there's a bunch of memes and all of this internet culture, but it's like, it's all unnecessary in the grand scheme of things. And also it breeds insecurity, it breeds fear of missing out, it pushes consumerism to even a level that I wouldn't go. I don't get the obsession with it. I don't want to ever have my kids to deal with that. They're not going to do it on my watch. Maybe that sounds authoritarian or whatever, but there's some things that you have to put your foot down as a parent. If they do it, like, I'll say it's okay, but please stay away from that because it's our belief, you know? And I'm going to make sure they know about our beliefs as well, like religion, because I want them to grow up grounded. Anyways, okay, sorry, I wasn't even following the plan. So maybe age 8, they'll get a tablet, and yeah, you can play games on it and stuff, but that's not really the point of it. So from age 8 to 10, I want them to be around me or my husband, just like kind of helping with chores and stuff, because it's about time they start learning about how to deal with the house and how to like help around, you know? And also some kids are also curious about that. It's just fair, you know? And then once they grow 10 to 15, this is something that my parents didn't do. They can start getting an allowance for doing chores. And chores specifically is not cleaning their room. It's anything outside of their room. So taking out the trash, helping with laundry, any of that is going to be considered a chore for them. But if it has to do with their room, it's not a chore. Because yes, responsibility should be rewarded. Yes, it's good to give your kids an allowance. But if you give them a reward for everything, they'll kind of get desensitized to the value of a reward and they won't take it seriously. And also, if I give them an allowance, I'm only going to give them limited spending of it, because when you're 10 years old, you don't think about the makeup that you're going to wear. And I don't want them to be thinking like that either, you know? And that's another benefit of staying off social media. You don't have weird stuff being fed into you at a young age. You kind of just get exposed to things when you get exposed to them or when you start thinking about them, right? And it's just more natural and better for you. Social media also breeds a chronic obsession with being on your phone and being connected all the time. I want to have my phone on for messages and phone calls and all of that, yes, but I don't want to be always checking for my friends. Like, I should only check for them when they check for me or when I'm like, hey, I should call this person, you know? Notifications and all of that, it's just overstimulation. So yeah, from 10 to 15, they will be getting an allowance if they do chores outside of their room. They will be required to keep their room clean, and if they don't get their allowance. Ooh, that's a very good stipulation. Because look, I would have loved to have allowance when I was growing up. It just shows like kind of appreciation, and also it's just kind of like an alternate way of, instead of saving the money for your kids, you actually give it to them. I'm not going to do any kind of like kid bank account. They're only going to get cash. And when they get to a certain age, they'll get a card, maybe 16, right? But I don't see the point of making a bank account for little kids. That's just a disaster waiting to happen. So if I'm giving my kids their allowance for doing a chore or whatever, it's gonna be something like $20. It's not gonna be so high like they're tempted by it, but it's not gonna be so low that it feels like you're being unfair to them, you know? And they'd probably have to get it at the end of the week instead of just every day, just to kind of control things a little bit. And there would probably also be a limit as to how much they could get. Also, I don't want to make it a system of like, if you do X amount of stuff, you'll get X amount of money, like $5 per chore, because that kind of makes it feel like you're working the child too much. No, I just want to give them the chores they're supposed to do. And then once they do all of them, they get the money, so that it's not really about the amount of chores you're doing, but about obeying what I told you to do. Because that is the more important thing to do, right? Focus on them being obedient as well. And I probably would let them know how much money they've accumulated over the years at a certain age, but then they won't be allowed to spend but a small portion of it, so that their spending can be controlled, especially when they're younger. They're not really focused on clothes and all of that. They just kind of pass over your head, except the Gen Alpha kids of nowadays. I do understand little kids wanting to be grown and all of that, but there is an extent to where it gets too far. I'm not saying you can find a cute shirt and buy it, but like, it shouldn't be makeup and skincare. That just feels all sorts of levels of wrong. Or even though skincare is kind of harmless if you pick the right stuff, but not that either, because they're focusing too much on their beauty instead of enjoying living as a child, you know? And also, I think I would probably open a bank account for them at the age of 16, and their money will just be somewhere, and they will only be given cash. If they get a card, it's gonna disrupt their concept of money. Even if you can tell them you have this much amount in the bank, it's like, it's a card. It's not the physical money in your hand, you know? So you have to teach them with cash, and then once they learn that concept, then you can start giving them the card. And then it's once they're an adult, that's when they can do checks. Checks is like off limits until 18, right? I know people don't think about checks, but I really like the notion of checks. Whatever, okay? I don't need to talk about this. Once they hit a certain age, their chore money will be lessened in order to kind of incentivize them to get a job. But if there's a situation going on, they just want to stay home for a little bit, maybe it would be $15 instead of $20 or something like that. Just to kind of incentivize them that, hey, we're letting you stay here, but we hope that you can move out. And once they move out, obviously no more allowance, but I'll give them allowance until they leave the house, just so that like they know their work is appreciated and they get something for it. I really don't want my kids to be unpaid laborers. I also don't want to be shouldering all of the work in the house, nor my husband. Everybody splits the work equally because we all live here, right? So it just makes sense. So basically at 16, when they start going out more, that's the time they can start looking for something to do. And then 16 through 18 is when the chore money will be lessened. And then when they eventually move out, no more chore money. So anyway, if I have a daughter, when she turns 15, that's when I'll probably start introducing her to makeup or something. Before that age, she can probably do her nails. For me, nail polish started at age of 4. I vividly remember that. It's not something I really cared about at that age, I will say that. But I guess maybe tween stage rather than immediately, you know, because at the age of 4, I remember wearing shiny nail polish, but I didn't know what was going on and all of that, so whatever. I'll probably limit that to age of 8. But real serious makeup, foundation, concealer, all of that, that's starting at age 15 or above. It is my daughter's choice, but I kind of want that part to be where she starts caring about those things. Because for me, I didn't start caring until literally this age 19 right now. And it's like, what? Like, did I never want to look pretty? And hair? Oh my God, don't even get me started on hair. I'm gonna make sure my daughter knows that she can blow out her hair, and I'm not braiding her hair with fake hair. If she wants twists, she's getting twists on her own hair, okay? If she wants to use hair, she's gonna buy it herself. I'm not going to by force blow it out. I'm gonna blow out my own hair so that she can see what it looks like, but I'm only gonna blow it out if she wants that for herself. I want to live somewhere where my kids can like bike to their friend's place or take a train or something. At the age of 16, I'll probably start allowing them to go out more. I don't know what I would have been like with that privilege, but I remember like at the age of 16, I specifically went and got a job. I guess that would have been a nice thing, but in America, it's just unheard of unless you have a car. I don't care about that stipulation, okay? I just care about the concept of a kid getting to go out and be free and be on their own. So I think that's very important to start at the age of 16, just to give them a little bit of independence, because again, they're going to teenager. I feel like 13 is the age you become a teenager, but it's a bit too early. So I feel like 16 is a better time to start, you know. 13, I was never thinking about going outside of the house and doing anything, you know. So I'm not going to do that for my kid either. Okay. And age of 18 is when skincare and jobs and all of that will be considered. But for me personally, I don't have a job. I'm just being very patient with myself with these things. And for that reason, I will not force my kids to move out. They will still get some kind of allowance even if they don't have a job, because that's a blessing. And that's all I'm going to say on that. When I grow older, I do want to work for as long as I possibly can. I don't really want to depend on my kids. I want to be able to give them something every now and then. Yeah, I don't really care about all of that stuff that's associated with growing older. I just want to be healthy when I'm older so that I don't have to worry about any of it. So yeah, there's another thing that I kind of forgot to do, which is like one of the cornerstones of childhood, which is like having sleepovers and parties and all of that. Obviously, I do want to do all of that, but if my kids are going to go to somebody's house and have a sleepover, first of all, I don't really like that. I kind of just prefer they see the person and then just go home. But if they really do want to have a sleepover, then it's only going to be with somebody that I can trust and call and be like, hey, where's my kid, or something like that. Yeah, I would probably have to be able to reach the parent consistently if I'm gonna allow something like a sleepover. One thing I don't want to do is force my kids to socialize, or force my kids to like people just because I like them, or force my kids to like people just because they're family. Like, you might think, oh, that's a good thing, but that's not how liking people and loving people works. You have to be selective about those kind of things, because if you're not, you're gonna get hurt a lot. Just because someone is family doesn't mean you have to be buddy and close with them. I'm not saying specifically push away your family, but I'm saying that just because you know somebody doesn't mean they're automatically going to be good to you. People like who they like. You can't change that about somebody, you know? So I can't really be sad and disappointed if they don't like somebody that I personally like, you know? Also, I do want to have like my children in a childhood where they're traveling a lot, because we kind of got that privilege to see a little bit of places besides just the US, not even just Ghana. You just want your kids to know more about the world than where they live in, because the internet doesn't do enough justice. The internet is not an airport, you know? Even if you watch a travel vlog or something, you're just seeing the place, but you're not experiencing it for yourself, you know? I know that traveling with kids or whatever is a hassle, but I feel like me and my man can definitely pull it off. If we just kind of buckle up and be a little bit serious, I'm sure we can do it. If we ever traveling to see family, we're not sleeping in anybody's houses. We're just going to rent a hotel. I just don't really personally believe in that. If somebody comes to my house, I don't want them to sleep there, you know? I just want them to like see me and then go. And I talked about it in a previous video. Part of it is about it being awkward, but the other part of it is that it creates this need for a guest room or to have extra supplies on hand, simply for one person who's not going to be there all the time, and it's just wasteful. I guess it would be important for my kids to know how to drive, but it's only going to be if they want to own a car. I do want to live in a society where, you know, not everybody has to own a car unless they want it. I'm kind of just going over random stuff that I kind of forgot to say in the video. I've kind of gone away from the mindset of everything needs to be natural and eco-friendly, but when it comes to food, I do very much still hold that mindset, because it's very important for the sake of your health. So we will be watching for that in the house. We're going to limit, I won't say processed foods, but we're going to limit stuff like snacks, protein bars, and all of this stuff instead of real meals. We're not cutting corners when it comes to meals. I do want my kids to be homeschooled, but I do want them to have alternate means of having a social life. For example, if they stay with us at our workplace or something, then they get to meet people through that. School is not the only place to meet people. I know that one of the arguments against homeschooling is that like oh, like your kids aren't going to be really that social because of, I don't know, I might reconsider the whole homeschooling thing, but for right now, that's kind of where my heart is, and especially at the younger ages. I didn't talk too much about religion, but that's because I don't want to force it down their throat. I do want to enforce some rules just based on my beliefs, such as like sex before marriage and my daughter bringing a man. You know, they can do all of that, but it's not going to be behind closed doors. You know what I mean? If for whatever reason we are out of the house and my kids have the keys, they're not allowed to bring somebody home. It doesn't matter if they can be trustworthy. It's just, we're not there to supervise, so I would not allow that. Even if they're like 18, that's not happening, because you're probably gonna screw up the house and then we're gonna have to clean it up, and I'm not doing any of that. If you want to invite people over, do it at your own house. Guys, I know that maybe this is controversial, but I don't really like the way that I grew up on like playing a bunch of games and stuff like that, because it manifested into an addiction. That's why you're seeing them in these videos, okay? You can have your device, you can do stuff on it, but there's other things you can do with the device. For example, write poems, write songs. Communication is one of the best things. Having a device is one of the most beautiful things, in my opinion, too. So I kind of want them to focus on the good sides of technology and not the addiction and social media and attention hungry side of it all. I also don't want to own a TV. Me personally, growing up, my big brother was the only person who really paid attention to the TV. So he was the one changing the channels all the time. So whatever we watched was what he was interested in. I think it's generally because like me and my little brother didn't really understand it at that time, but he had an Xbox for some years, then we got one, and then my little brother hogs that. So it was like I was never really attached to the TV. Yeah, there are some shows that I like, but you can watch them off of TV. So if we're ever gonna watch something like that, it's going to be on a laptop. This is kind of an obvious one, but I do believe in keeping pictures, and I'm only going to print out like baby pictures. But like as for the time my kid are growing up, I also want to have pictures of that, but those are not really going to be printed out too often unless by their request or unless it's just really special. Another thing that's really important to me is making sure my kids know the language of my parents and my husband's parents. So my parents' language, right? And then there's my mother's dialect as well. That's getting passed down, except the dialect. That dialect, I can't speak it, guys. It's difficult, so I don't know if I'll be able to do that one. But I do want to make sure my kids know that, hey, you guys are 25% Ghanaian, and they will travel to Ghana, okay? And they will travel to my husband's parents' country. They are not going to forget their roots, okay? Because those roots are what you grew from. Maybe this seems a little bit extreme, but for my kids, I kind of want them to have a clothing catalog early so that we have control over spending. Sometimes financial problems is literally just a result of bad management of what you already have, you know, and that can be prevented with stuff like the catalog. It doesn't have to be the spreadsheet, but it has to be something. So for my kids, I do want to start that and probably teach them about it too. Even though it looks like I'm just being extra, it's actually really important, and it actually saves money and saves time and everything if you can maintain it. When we were growing up, we would just periodically get new clothes. Every now and then you would just go to this shop and buy a bunch of clothes, and then you end up not wearing a portion of it, maybe 25% of it, and then out of the rest you wear half of that regularly. Then eventually you grow out of those clothes. It's like a certain percentage of clothes is not even been worn by you, but you bought them anyway. And reselling is also not something that's considered, but I am definitely going to be doing that with my kids' clothes, if not passing them down to somebody else in my family. But the family will get the choice, and then whatever they don't want will just be resold, so that way I can still make some money back. I can't give everything for free, come on. Maybe that's a bit greedy, but hey, that's how I roll, I guess. Also, when it comes to clothing, I'm not going to prioritize actually building their wardrobe until they hit a certain age. If you try and build their wardrobe when they're like too young, then they're gonna grow out of all of those clothes, and you're just gonna regret the money you used, right? So maybe when they hit, like, again, age 15, that's when you can start building the wardrobe, because that they'll probably stay a similar size from that point on or something like that, right? And also they'll be more firm in their identity, they'll know what they want, and etc. I didn't really add this to the makeup part, but I actually don't really like how I was using a bunch of lip gloss from a young age. I didn't really know that the purpose was to look pretty. I was kind of just using it as a moisturizer. Nail polish was another thing. I wasn't really cognizant of what it was. And with the catalog thing, maybe they'll just grow to a certain age before I show them. It's a lot, so you can't just introduce that when they're super young and don't know what's going on, you know? But at the same time, you still want to introduce it at young so it's kind of ingrained from them. So again, 10, 12, something like that is like the perfect time probably. Okay guys, so I guess it's my parenting plan. Things might change, but in general, it should all be the same. I hope it wasn't too confusing, but I have more videos to edit. So bye!